Welcome, welcome, welcome. Table Crashers episode 51, ladies and gents. 51. You got us over the hill here, Peter, just so you know.
It's a good number. I like that.
it's a good number. We hit that little half centennial. I guess there's probably a real word for that, but I can't think of it right now. But here we are at episode 51. Peter Sanderson.
It's 50. Is that Diamond? Is that Diamond? They signed
like your anniversary. You mean like Diamond?
Yeah,
I think, yeah. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
I think that's yeah.
If only we had access to a source that could give us that answer.
If only. It doesn't matter. So
I gotta find out now.
See, stop it. No, I'm kidding. So Peter Sanderson is joining us tonight. The game is Mothership, currently on Kickstarter, just launched about a few hours ago on Kickstarter. This is the second printing, the second edition of the game. I hesitate to say second printing because it's you title it second edition, and normally that means that there's been some tweaks and changes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so so it's the same game, but new and improved. I'll start right early because we did talk about the module that is out for this game by giving Ken Cunningham another plug because Ken's amazing and he does amazing work on Tabletop Simulator to translate physical games to that space. So Ken did work on this module, so you guys know what you're gonna like. You know you're expecting something great because Ken made it. So please check it out. I'm really excited about this game. To be full disclosure, I didn't really get to play it. I just watched some videos on it. But I'm really excited for Peter to teach us this afternoon for him because he's in Australia, correct, sir?
Yep, that's right.
But yeah, so we'll jump right into it. And actually, natural transition here, sort of. I love the video you did, the retro video you did for this game. And if you'll allow me, I'm actually going to do a quick transition. This is the first time we've actually been able to do this because now I'm sort of hosting the thing on my end here. So I'm going to transition over.
Makes us feel like we are actually on air in a real TV studio.
I wrote, well, yeah, right?
The legend is cool.
We'll return after these messages.
Mothership is the game that puts you in the captain's seat. Command your fleet and protect your colony station with the nimble fighter, the powerful bomber, and the mighty Mothership. With your Mothership control panel, you can divert all power to weapons, target eliminated, research new technologies, capture planets, discover strange alien artifacts, and deploy powerful weapons. Never conquer the same galaxy twice. Customize the board and fight through a new map every time you play. And introducing new distress beacons. Explore the void of space and play through exciting missions. We need to respond to that beacon. All power to engines. Mothership. Divert all power to fun.
You personally did that, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I was really struggling on trying to find a hook for this campaign. Like I really wanted to find something that sort of set it apart from all the other Kickstarter videos that are up there at the moment. And I'm a real sucker for like that sort of 80s, 90s nostalgia.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of hoping that everyone else in my demographic will also be a sucker for it. So
and you also kind of had me with like the C Labs rip on the engineer, like.
Oh, perfect. Yep. Oh, yeah. It's crazy that you got that. I tried really hard to, because we'll probably talk about it in a moment, the Star Trek animated series parody that I did, but I tried really hard to make it so I changed it just enough so I wouldn't get sued. But you picked it up. That's pretty cool that you picked it up.
Yeah, and so just so you guys know, I'm not going to pull that video up, but there is another video for promotion, and it's like this full like episodic like Star Trek type of thing, and it's glorious, which is funny because. You're right. You know, now with the current Kickstarter environment, you need that hook that that's beyond just like, hey, I made a game. You know, that it's no longer viable for the current temperature of Kickstarter.
Yeah.
What I guess related to that, what has that done? Like, how has your mentality shifted as a designer and self-publisher with the current market on Kickstarter the way it is?
I love how much it's grown. I was checking out like a whole bunch of podcasts and videos and stuff about how much the market on Kickstarter has grown. Because I was a little bit worried coming back 4 years later after my last one to think like, oh, maybe maybe like it's too saturated. Maybe there's not enough people backing to go, like not enough money to go around basically. But
Right.
no, Kickstarter's brought in more people having a look at games, more original games as well, and I love it. I was a little bit worried about it, but the data is basically there to say no, there's room for everyone, and if you've got a cool
Right.
original idea, then yeah, go for it.
Right. But like we just said, it's beyond. You knew though. You needed a different kind of hook because before 4 years ago when you launched this, did you have a video?
Yeah, I had a video. My hook was basically talking about the game and how I've designed it to be different from other games.
Very good.
And it wasn't just like a straight like 100 years in the future, you'll have a spaceship and stuff. Like I didn't really want to go for that kind of a feel. I wanted to say, hey, this is what I've made. This is why it's different. Have a look if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, that's good. And you went the genuine route. You went to just like, here I am. I'm the designer.
Yep.
Enjoy my game.
I'm not genuine this time. I'm a shill this time.
Yeah, a little bit of a shill. It's okay.
Yeah. I've been trying to sell it my entire life. It's harder than people think it is.
No, trust me, I know that. I know that. So I guess we'll jump into your design process. So everybody has their own little quirks and the way that they do things, in what they do for a living, in their hobbies, everything. But how do you approach game design? And what do you think maybe your thing might be different than another designer in the market?
I really wish I had like a really insightful thing to tell you, but it all comes down to just if it's fun. And the amount of times we've played like properly produced games, not talking about my game, but like talking about any sort of produced games and just
absolutely
thinking, why is this in here? Why did they include this element? And I tried you try really hard to go, okay, I see this is what the designer is going for. I see why they put this in here, but it's not fun.
Right.
And so when I went to design Mothership, which was based off of another war game that we played a lot, similar to Warhammer, I tried my best to take all of the fun bits, take out all of the stuff that sort of fluffed it up, and made it bulkier than it needed to be, and tried really hard to stick to that principle, make it fun and make it uncluttered. Right.
So, I mean, the essence of what I just heard from you is, your passion triggers you and triggers that creative, influence. So what's leading you through this design process is your passion to make the best game you think that you want to see, but also you think the market's going to fall into.
I think like, cause I don't have a massive company behind me to sort of say, oh, we need to reduce this because we need to make this X amount of profit or something. So what I've got is just a game that I wanted to make because it is fun. Right. And that's the bottom line of it.
Yeah, and you're hitting a lot of the buttons. I'll tell you just through watching the video and like just seeing the way some of the mechanics work. Infinite replayability due to the map setups and changes you could do and the way you deploy your forces. That's a big thing because you saw something that's sort of drawn away from the industry with a lot of the newer games that hit the market because everybody was looking for just like heavier components. But mechanics sort of took a back seat to the glitz, right? The glitz and the glam over the last 2 years. So it's nice to see, in a way, a return to the crunchier, because you'll hear that term, but it's a unique design that is malleable to work with the player's inspirations, I guess, which I think is important.
Yeah, and I love games that I can muck around with and I can change.
Yep.
And I really love Lego. I grew up playing with Lego, and the thought that you buy like a truck and then you finish building the truck and you go, I don't like the truck anymore, so you take it apart, you build something else. So it's so cool that you can get Mothership to the table, you can set it up the way that it's supposed to be set up, and then if someone's like, the next game, hey, let's just like push everything in the corner, we'll chuck planets in places they're not supposed to be, let's just see what happens, because it's fun to just muck around with what you're given.
Absolutely. Who, and instead of, you don't have to do a specific who, but I mean, I would say who generally influenced you into game design?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably having a lot of alone time, I reckon, because I grew up like I've got two older sisters who they're way older than me, so they didn't really hang out with me. So there I am in my room, playing Lego, going online, finding out that you can get a whole rule book to facilitate a war game with Lego, which I thought was amazing. Showing it to my friends.
That is cool. Yeah.
I'm sort of like I'm a naturally sort of creative person, if I can say that. So the seeing something that's broken in a game and then wanting to fix it is probably what drove me to wanting to design games.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that answers your questions.
No, absolutely. So basically, games that you already played, you there were things that you gave you a little twitch. You're like, I like this game, but this little thing is
stuff.
Right. This could be better, and so you started by that framework, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh well, I could take maybe these 20 games, because I think that's part of game design as well. Is all of us play games, the ones, especially those who are in game design, and there's a point where you reach and you're like, I can make my own game, but then you end up pulling from the vocabulary of all the games you learned before, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, there's obviously original thought, but so much of what you learn and what you build in game design is from the people that came before you, the designs that came before you, and you take little bits of each influence you had, and all of a sudden, boom, it props up and it builds this game that's yours and unique.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. What games influenced you? Like specific either genres or specific games, if you have any of those.
Probably genre. I think it'd be better. Real-time strategy games on PC really heavily influenced my board game design,
right?
Because the thing I love most, and I don't know how other people play RTSs, because I know RTSs can be really competitive.
They can.
But our little gaming group, we play RTSs, and we're sort of like casually competitive. So we won't throw the keyboard through the window if we lose,
right?
But we'll have a bit of fun with it, and it's those interactions between us as friends that drove me to want to replicate that in a board game. So if you've got like the 3 or 4 of us in a free-for-all Command & Conquer, Age of Empires, StarCraft map, whatever, and people are building bases, you're trying to figure out what everyone else is doing, you're trying to play people off each other because you're all on chat, so you're talking about I think this guy's got an army over here. Let's go have a look. But you've lied to him, and now you've actually got someone behind his base. Like, you see all those little human interactions, which is it's fun. Like the game facilitates having fun with your friends.
Right.
And it was that genre that really pushed me to saying, let's make this in a board game, because I couldn't find a board game equivalent of that.
That's great. Now I have to ask, with that, was it originally let's make it a board game, or was it like I want to make a video game like this or something like it, and then when the sort of market hit with board games, you were like, well, you know what, I'd like to make a video game, but I could probably make a board game.
That's a really good question, actually. When I was young, I dabbled in like RPG Maker and adventure games and stuff.
Of course, same here.
I like actually trying lots of different things creatively, because I think I just get bored. So like I've done graphic design, animation. I've made puppets just because I want to make a Sesame Street style puppet, and that was cool. And stuff like that. And I started making Mothership not because I set out to make a board game, but just because I wanted to try something different. But then we got to a point, like it was after like a good 3 years of just doing it as a hobby, no intention of producing it properly, just forcing my friends to play it, where one of my really good friends who's helped out with my latest campaign, he said, hey, I think other people would like this.
Right.
And it completely took me by surprise, because my friends are very honest to me. They'll tell me if they hate it. But for him to say, I think other people would like this, maybe go, hey, wait, let's actually see if we can make it into a real game.
Right. And you said, now did your friends sort of come up with you through this process too? Did you have some extra support where they were helping along the lines of development and testing with you? Or was it like a solo, like, hey, you could probably make this for some other people, and then like they were like, well, see you later.
I wish I could tell you that I came up with every idea in the game and every fun part is because of me. That's just not true. There's so many elements that have been improved on because I mean, you need this as a designer. You need other people to bounce ideas off, because especially when you're sitting there, you're doing the graphics, you're writing the rules, and like, oh, this is such a great idea. I'm gonna chuck this in here. You take it to the table, and your friends, they're like, that's terrible. Why'd you even come up with that idea? Let's do this instead. And you're like, huh? Yeah, I'm gonna add that in. Let's do that. So there's a lot of my friends who played those RTSs with me. They heavily influenced the style and the way that you play, and a lot of the changes that are in there were made for the better.
Excellent. And so, I mean, those are close friends. Obviously, you did play testing outside of that group of friends, most likely, right? And especially in between, and then in the 4 years in between, in this new release, you've obviously taken notes and gotten guidance from input from the community as a whole that you sort of cultivated. What has feedback been like to you? How do you approach feedback you receive from, and I'll use air quotes here, playtesters, because there is a distinction usually between them. And I'm not to say I don't want to insult anybody and say that because you play games and you provide feedback, you're not a playtester. But there is sometimes a different mentality that goes into that type of input where it's constructive and it helps us make a product, right?
I think I like you made that distinction between people who playtest and people who, I guess, like if you're talking about like maybe critical reviewers, like on online blogs.
Sometimes, or even people who like pick up like a print and play or like an earlier version of your game and they want to try it and they want to play it, and then they come back to you with feedback. There's obviously a difference between that feedback that you receive. So in my experience with it, and I think in most game design experience, because I've actually seen a lot of companies now releasing like sort of like articles saying, hey, if you want to play test, please just tell us what you're frustrated about. Don't try to fix it.
It's funny you mention that. There's I have gotten lots and lots of feedback, and a lot of feedback that from playtesters who have tried to fix things, and like there's some things where you're just like, yeah, that's not going to work. That's not gonna work. But I mean, if they're frustrated about something and they say they don't like that, like you can't ignore it.
No, that's the important feedback. Yeah. Any playtester, worth their salt at this point in the industry, knows that at the heart, at the core of designer feedback, it's if you're sitting there and you're frustrated. That's why everybody says watch the table when they're playing, because that tells you more than sometimes what people verbally say to you. Frustration is the key point to this is broken and I have to fix it.
Yeah, it's scary too. It's scary. It's scary giving it to a random bunch of people and just anxiously waiting for those surveys to come back and their thoughts and stuff. And I'll sit in the corner and cry about, I thought this was gonna be perfect. Why isn't it perfect first time? Anyway.
I've been there too.
I'm happy with where it's in there. I'm happy with where it's at the moment.
Of course. Your initial feedback in playtesting, I mean, it gets better over time, I think, the way that you can deal with it. But was it difficult to sort of put yourself in the mindset, the critical mindset on what was coming in from feedback early in your game design experiences? Yeah,
it's I think just my personality in general, I sort of get a bit annoyed when it's not perfect first time, especially because as a designer, I've learned never go with your first idea, and I'm annoyed when those first ideas don't work, even though I know, like, obviously it needs tweaking or whatever.
Of course.
But thankfully, I'm so OCD that if it's not perfect, I have to make it perfect. Right. So when those first few people came back and said, this wasn't fun, why is this in here? Like, it's annoying, but it's also another problem to fix, and I enjoy problem fixing, so problem solving.
Right. It depends on how much it went into that design too. Because like if you spent like 3 weeks like balancing it and you're like, oh, okay, this is gonna be great, and then somebody comes back and they're like, oh no, that's not that's not
good.
I've
done that. I've done that before. Something that I was just like, oh, this is gonna be the centerpiece of my next campaign, and
I
would scrap it. We don't talk about that one anymore.
What lessons have you learned since the first edition?
Oh wow, that's a great question. It always surprises me what people want. Like I put up the first campaign not really knowing what was going to happen because I was a first-time creator. I had to learn everything on the fly, so that was like all marketing and all the production stuff, all the fulfillment stuff. And I was kind of thinking, because I know first-time creators have a reputation, and for good reason, so I wasn't sure whether people were going to resonate at all, but they what really surprised me was how much they loved the hook and the concept of the game and what I was showing them. So that really
Right.
surprised me. Then I came back with a second campaign and I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna put all this stuff in there. And then people came back and went, no, we don't like that. I was like, what? I was certain you're gonna love it. So that always surprises me between each campaign, that I think I have my audience, my backers absolutely figured out this is
Right.
what they're gonna love, and then they tell me they turn around and hate it, and then so you have to be flexible, and you can't turn around and say, no, you're wrong, this is how it should be. So
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is difficult, especially, and I think there's instances where you can say that, but at the right time, and also with evidence and why you can say that. So a good example, I think, is if you legitimately, as the designer, know that something that they're saying is not good, it's good, it just has to be fixed.
Yeah.
If you share that with the community in a way that it makes sense, like, this is why, like, you could say, hey, this is why I designed this. I know it's not right, but I'm not going to take all of it out because I know it could work. But if you just flat out say, no, the game's ready, buy it or don't. I've seen a lot of first time and sometimes experienced companies and individuals on Kickstarter take a hard stand and say, no, this is the way it should be. And then all of a sudden you see like this little trickle away of the backers. I've seen it with more than a handful of campaigns this year and last year.
I think it's you have to have a balance. You have to have balance.
Yeah.
You've got to be humble, and you've got to be like, yeah, my game does suck, which is why you play test to make it not suck.
Right.
And have a balance when you're like, no, actually, this is the way it's designed. I now that you've mentioned that, there's one particular design element in my game that it's designed to force a short game, or not designed to force a short game, but designed to have an end, because the game's designed not to drag on for hours.
Of course.
So
puts it like a control. It's like a control mechanic to cap the time that you're going to spend at the table, right?
Yeah. So in other words, like towards the end of the game, people start to get some really overpowered abilities, and so some of the community was saying, "Oh, these are really overpowered. Like, I think you should really take them out." And then when they understood the reason for them being in there, and actually, oh yeah, this is supposed to be a light, quick game. It's not meant to be a 5-hour game of Twilight Imperium or something like that. Then they understand, and
Yeah, and another nice thing that the ability that we have as designers is that you could just walk away from that and say, or not even walk away from it. You could just drop in the little asterisk and say, up to you. I mean, you could take that rule out if you want, or you could change the way that these weapons work or balance in your own way. And then if the feedback from them is like, here's a nice little thing you get to do as your own self-publisher. If the feedback's good, you could be like, hey, do you mind if I throw your name in my rule book and credit you for this, and I don't know, use it in the future?
Yeah. There's been actually a couple of backers who have just posted stuff randomly. I remember in the first campaign, they posted something randomly, like, that's a really good idea, and now that's like a staple of the game. So
that's awesome, and it's great that you're flexible, and it's great that you use the feedback of the community. It's one of the reasons I think the people who on Kickstarter that do that continue to be successful, is because it brings the community into the development and the design of the game. If you're just out there to sell a product, Kickstarter is not the right place for it.
That's like you said, like that's Kickstarter's biggest strength, is its community and people chipping in.
Correct.
And I completely agree with you. If more people could embrace their communities more and make changes based on what they want, because like they're your customers, like give them what they want.
Right, and it's beyond that, because in a way they're your investors. And I mean, when the customer is a customer, when they pay the money, they have the product. Game over. You spent your money, no refunds. But when you have somebody who's involved as an investor, sometimes they're paying more, they're waiting longer, they're there from the beginning to the end. So you have to go with the mentality that, yes, this is my game, I'm designing it, but this is also my community now, and the people who are backing me are influencers in this design, whether I like it or not, right?
Yeah, absolutely right.
I actually had a question for you about the Australian sort of game environment right now, because I mean, you you have civilization on opposite sides of the country. This whole black mass and this whole like desert mass in between, where there's snakes and alligators or I'm sorry, what do you have there? Is it alligators or crocodiles? Crocodiles. Sorry,
Yep.
but it's just a barren outback wasteland.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head.
So how does that really work? I mean, is it a flourishing environment out there, or are there like smatterings of participation, and do you have to really
like,
work?
Sort of geek stuff in general, or board game?
I guess both. Because in conventions and stuff, like is there a healthy convention season for you guys over there?
There's at the moment where I am, so I live at the sort of the bottom of Australia, in Melbourne. Okay. So it's, I think, Australia's second biggest city, and then the next is Sydney. So we get PAX every year, which is amazing that we get that in this city, and that's huge, and that's getting bigger and bigger every single year. And then between that, we do have like lots of smaller little conventions. So we're getting lots of people just starting up Facebook groups to go, hey, let's just all meet in this community center and we'll play games for a weekend. And a couple of those have gotten bigger and bigger every single year. So it's I think it's a great time to be a board game designer and just to find randoms to play games with.
Yeah, of course.
it is difficult that there is a massive chunk of desert in the middle of that.
Yeah, especially because is there like a little like is there like strong rivalry between like the East and the West in the way in terms of, this isn't even with gaming, but like with like your sports and participation and stuff like that?
I personally forget that the West exists, and
so in my mind there is no Western Australia. it's just this East Coast, northern and east and southern eastern coast of Australia.
Well, but in saying that, like, the West generally has better weather and they have much better beaches than Melbourne. Right. You have better coffee. And I'm from so there's 2 states away. There's a much larger state called Queensland, so that's where I was originally from, and they have much better beaches as well. So actually, I don't even know why I live here. It's terrible weather all the time.
You just had like an existential crisis about where you live right now.
Yeah, well, we say this all the time. Like the weather here is so stupid. It's like really, really hot one day and then freezing the next. And
oh wow.
Anyway, but we have faster internet, so that's probably
why. But the other thing that's nice for your location too is sort of like your participation with the creation of your games. You're going to get your prototypes quicker than obviously we're going to get them in the States. Usually Australia, I know from looking from our perspective, if you're having anything produced in China or that region, it's usually going to get to you before anybody else. So do you see like a quicker turnaround, obviously, if you're prototyping and things like that?
I love actually the best thing is, my favorite part is that China and Australia is sort of like on a similar time zone. So if you're a designer in America, you have to wait maybe overnight to get a response back, whereas I'm chatting to my manufacturer and going, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? Get a response back within half an hour. So that's probably my favorite part. Yeah,
that is great. That is great. Distribution, you've dealt with it before. Where is the hardest place, or where are the hardest places on the back end during distribution to sort of get it right, in your experience?
You mean like in the process, or
so like games are produced, they're on the ships going to various locations. Where did the biggest headaches for you sort of come from, if any?
Probably organizing. See, fulfillment, when I first started learning it, was such a massive, overwhelming, scary thing to get into. Because your board game that you've very anxiously scraped money together off Kickstarter to print is just another container on the back of some ship.
Of course.
And you feel sort of a bit funny, sort of messaging these shipping companies going, hi, my name's Peter. I have a game. Can you tell me how to get this to 1,000 people? Thank you.
Right.
So that was a little bit scary, but there's that many services, like genuinely good services on the internet, that will help organize it for you. So that was probably like the scariest thing about how to organize it, how to split it up so it's cheap as well, because I think we ended up going with 3 different regions for the last campaign. So in other words, we shipped a whole crate to the US, a whole crate
Yep.
to Europe, and then a whole crate to Australia, and then they
Right.
shipped it out to all the companies. That's probably the hardest part to figure out how to split that up in the most efficient way,
Of course.
because the more containers you have going out on ships, the more expensive it is, which is
Yeah.
But
Right.
if you organize it just right, you can do it economically.
Yeah. No, because I know, and I think that's the scariest for most people that are going into, because you're dealing, like, but in heart you're creative, and that creative force comes from, usually within the design realm, it comes from heavy reading, heavy lore reading, or from the mathematics field or computer field. You see a lot of overlap with people that we see in design, or it's an amalgamation of those three qualities. Usually logistics are not a part of that,
Yeah.
that
Yeah, no, not
core
even.
skill set. That's like,
I know that boats exist.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
a start.
Didn't know they were that big, that they carried so many boxes. And I have to laugh too, because, like, as you were saying that thing about, excuse me, sir, I have a game on your ship, and then he's like, oh, right, next to that life-saving medicine. Okay, sure. We'll take care of that, buddy. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah,
we have like the cure from the cure from measles over here, and then my game. Top priority, your game, no problem.
Well, I don't know why they would put the cure for measles on a boat that takes like 6 weeks to get where it needs to go.
Well, maybe they will. Who knows? Come on, don't ruin it.
Yeah, cheaper that way. They make more money off it.
Don't you ruin it with your analysis, Peter. What advice do you have for anyone new designers entering into this space?
I think the advice that I would have would be, have a lot of passion for what you do and persistence. There's no skill that you can learn from a university that will give you those two things, passion and persistence.
Right.
There's so many times that I wanted to give up because my project was either it was too big for me to handle at the time, or it was too overwhelming or too difficult to fix the bugs that I'd found in my game. But because I just really wanted to see it all the way through, I didn't want it to be incomplete. I had that passion to just see it all the way to the end, and I really wanted to make a better product, not to make money and not to please anyone else, but to please myself and my immediate friends. So if you've got that, like, you'll push through. You'll push through any problem that you could possibly come up with.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. That's actually probably the best piece of advice.
That might be like a really, like, I don't know, for anyone listening, that might be kind of like a lame piece of advice, because you're like, oh yeah, I've heard that before. Have persistence, have passion, but
right.
Yeah, nothing replaces it.
Well, you know what? To sort of expound on that, it's kind of cheesy, like, in a way, like what you're saying,
cheesy,
but at the same time, if at any point in the process of doing what you're doing with games and you lose that, then stop and back up and figure out exactly what you want in the whole thing, because the passion is the driving force for that creativity, and if you don't feel it, then I mean, a lot of people say, when do a lot of questions you'll get from designers if they're talking to, like, established designers, when do I put a game on a shelf that I'm designing? And that's when, right? That's what, if you lost passion for that project, step away from it, put it on the shelf, work on something new, generate that passion again with this new project, and maybe in 4 or 5 or 6 years you can go back to that shelf and say, hey, after I designed this and this game, I think I have a better idea about that game that I lost passion on, right?
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened to me in the last, because I did a second campaign which I had to cut off before the date finished, and after that I was completely burnt out. I was 100% burnt out, and then I was like, that's it, don't want to do it anymore, I've had enough. I did my print run, and you've got your game, and then I took a break for about a year and I think about a year, where I played through all the games that I missed, and just blew through all the stuff that I missed while I was doing Mothership stuff, and then came back to it and had all these ideas and renewed passion, and that's why the game at the moment looks 10 times better than it did before, because I could have just put it up with all the old graphics, but that passion came back, where it's just like, no way, I've got so many new ideas, let's make it amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I have noticed too. I have noticed the design elements definitely pop more laid out in. There's a lot of influences in graphic design that you've sort of brought over from probably that experience.
Yeah.
What is your favorite game mechanic?
In my game or in general?
In general, what's your favorite game mechanic?
My favorite game mechanic, hands down, is resource management. I love resource management because I love getting things, and in any game that you know when you like you go to game night, someone's teaching you a new game, and if there's resource management, it's like even though you don't know what's going on, you get that dopamine hit because you're getting something.
That's
and you're
true.
like, I don't know why I've got these like if you're playing guitar, I don't know why I've got this sheep and this wheat. But I'm happy I got it and I want more. I don't know what it's good for yet. So that's hands down my favorite mechanic.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. And also that there's also that adrenaline rush when you go into trading too, because what usually inherent within that system is trade. And you're like, wow, well I have like 5 sheep here. He might think I don't have that many. I'm gonna just try to get one over on him. And so I agree. That's and within your game, is that also your favorite mechanic within your game?
Oh, that's a good question. No, it's not my favorite mechanic in my game, but it's one that as soon as I put it in the game, it like made it 1,000 times better.
Of course.
Yeah.
What within your game would you say is your favorite aspect? Because we could sort of preview it by you telling me what your favorite aspect is.
My favorite mechanic of the game is the Mothership mechanic. So it's like the most. It is like I consider to be like the unique mechanic of the game that I haven't seen in anything else. So I love Star Trek and Star Wars and every other sci-fi. You think of Battlestar Galactica, Firefly, all that. So when you see in these TV shows, you have a capital ship and they're talking about moving energy around their subsystems to put all our power into engines so we can get away with something.
Of course.
Put it all into shields and that. That's what I've replicated in Mothership in the simplest way possible, and that's my favorite because it adds so much diversity to such a simple thing. And that's my favorite mechanic.
So you distilled the feeling. You feel like you simplified it enough where you still feel like you're doing those things, but it's in an easy to teach and easy to play thing through the actions you're taking.
And it's fun. It's fun to have those decisions as well in game. I mean, in any game where you have to make a hard decision is good, but to think like, oh, do I put all my power into my engines to try and reach that key planet? But it's going to leave me vulnerable if someone else gets the idea and comes after me. That's a lot of fun. And I've seen a lot of other board games have sort of like a similar, not a similar mechanic, but they have like a spaceship where you manage subsystems around it.
Of course.
Which I like as a giant nerd, I love things that are really overly complicated anyway. So in no way are those games bad because they're complicated, because I love that sort of thing.
Right.
But my other less nerdy friends may not be.
Right.
And so the fact that they can grasp that and they enjoy doing it is pretty cool.
And again, you just sort of highlighted the other eternal struggle for designers is, inherently you want it to feel as close to the real life experience or fantasy experience through
real
the
life
mechanics.
Experience of flying.
No, this is real. These are real. These aliens that we're taking over are real. Stop it. But no, so you're right. But with that, but you're trying to replicate that feeling, and you're trying to do it as true to that feeling as possible. And sometimes you over design, right? And then that's when your friends are sort of like, hey, yeah, I like it, but this is a little heavy. So the next one's kind of a goofy question, but I ask it of all of our guests. What is your guilty pleasure game?
My guilty pleasure game. So
So when I usually say that, people sometimes ask me to follow it up. It's the one game or maybe a handful of games that you play that if you go to a convention, you say that you like that game, or within the general gaming group, they would be like, "Really? You like that game?" That's kind of your guilty pleasure game. The game that not
you had to make me look through my Steam list to see what I've got here. As far as maybe the actual game itself is not a guilty pleasure. Like I probably wouldn't be embarrassed to mention it.
Okay.
But what I love doing is like I enjoy playing those RTS games where I'm fighting and it's really hard. But I also like the games where all of the AI enemies are set to easy and I can just steamroll them. It's it's so relaxing. If you do make guilty pleasure, that's what I'm embarrassed to admit. Having an AI game where everyone's set to easy and I can just roll over them.
Yeah, you just like
pretend they're
it's like
balls of ice ball or
meditative.
something. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What about in terms of board games? Are there any board games that you play that you know that you think people would be like?
I really like Rummikub.
Okay, that sounds. Yeah, I haven't played it, but I know I've heard the name. Is that
Yeah, like it's
just
like
like
an
a basic?
old. It's like the game that your grandma has in a cupboard.
Got it.
And I actually do remember my grandma having it, and I was always really scared when I was younger of the little scary face that's on one of the tiles, which now I learn is a wild card. That's a lot of fun. I play a lot of because I was brought up playing card games a lot, so a lot of card games. I don't know. I'm not even gonna bother mentioning them because they're probably different in America.
Yeah.
But yeah, card games that you learn growing up. That's a lot of fun. That's what I enjoy.
Excellent.
Playing.
Excellent. So before we transition to the table and do the roll teach, I'm going to give you an opportunity to sort of give us a, like what else is happening in the world of Peter. Anything you want to plug, any place you're going to be, like convention wise in the near future, and I guess any kind of future plans you want to sort of reveal to us.
Yeah, that's future plans. I can't honestly think past this campaign at the moment. In my non-board game life, I'm a bookkeeper, so that's probably the most far away thing from board games as you could probably get.
Yeah.
And I went to the toy and trade fair yesterday, which was a lot of fun. So in Melbourne, we had a convention where people, like other companies, set up their stalls to try and sell to toy shops for the next year.
Of
So
course.
like Lego had a stall, and there was Beanie Babies and all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
and you had a good time there.
Yeah, that was great. It was really good because I'm not. I was there meeting up with a board game distributor, but
Right.
it was fun sort of walking around and people trying to sell us, stuff.
So
That we
I want
obviously can't afford.
I want to clarify too. You mentioned bookkeeper. Bookkeeper in Australia, what does that job entail? Because bookkeeper in America, some might not be the same line.
I think as far as a standard bookkeeper goes in Australia versus America, it's the same. I'm sort of maybe the next level up where I know Australian tax law.
Okay, so you're an accountant in Australia.
Not quite. There's like a level between bookkeeper and an accountant. So accountant's like you got to do 9 years of study and then you can start charging people thousands of dollars for one invoice.
Okay.
Whereas a bookkeeper is like it's like sort of like a middle ground where I don't know like sales tax.
Because normally when I hear bookkeeper here in America, and I think most people will attribute to it, they'll think bookie that brings in the money for bets.
No, not that. No, don't do that.
So I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Yeah. You're not hedging bets over there in Australia, right? You're not sending people out to kneecap other people.
No, that's right.
Especially the way you announced it so nonchalantly. I was like, oh, okay, I guess maybe bookkeepers are more...
I'm really happy you clarified that. Thank you.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page. But yeah.
No, far more boring. And I can't break people's kneecaps even if
No, well, you have a team for that. I mean, you're just...
Oh,
you're
that's right. I'd outsource it.
Yeah. Excellent. So with that, any conventions? Are you heading to any conventions this next year?
Hopefully PAX at the end of the year. That's what I'm planning to do. That's, I think, October. I should hopefully be with my distributor flogging off whatever games we end up printing.
Okay, great.
Good.
Great. Phenomenal. So with that, everybody have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for being with us, Peter. Really appreciate it. And I really wish you the best of luck with this campaign. Thank you.
Thank you very much.